5 situations you should never defend yourself. Most people grow up believing that whenever someone misunderstands them, they must defend themselves. We're raised on the idea that explanations fix everything, that being silent means you're guilty, and that good people prove their intentions whenever they are questioned. But psychology and human philosophy show a very different truth. Defending yourself is not always a sign of strength, and staying quiet is not always a sign of weakness. There are moments where defending yourself creates more damage than clarity, more confusion than peace, and more emotional exhaustion than resolution. Your mind and nervous system operate on something psychologists call emotional regulation economy. Your mental energy, your clarity, and your ability to stay calm are limited resources. Every time you explain yourself, every time you justify your motives, every time you try to correct someone's misunderstanding, you are spending those resources. And the painful truth is that many of the situations in which we try hardest to defend ourselves are the exact situations where defending ourselves does nothing at all. Some people don't want clarity. Some people aren't listening to the truth. Some people aren't capable of hearing what you mean because their mind is working overtime to protect beliefs they already formed long before you said a single word. Human philosophy has explored this for centuries. The Stoics warned people never to waste their energy fixing perceptions that were never rooted in reality. Buddhist teachings say that suffering comes from attachment to how others see us. And modern psychology adds another perspective. No amount of explanation can reach a mind that is committed to misunderstanding. Understanding this is not about becoming cold or detached. It's about recognizing that explanations only work when the other person is emotionally capable of receiving them. When the listener is open, calm, curious, and fair, explanations bring clarity and connection. But when the listener is biased, defensive, angry, or determined to win, explanations become useless, draining, and sometimes even harmful. There are 5 situations where defending yourself is not only unnecessary, but damaging. 5 moments where staying quiet or stepping back protects your well-being far more than speaking ever could. These situations are rooted in the way the human mind forms beliefs, handles discomfort, interprets intention, and protects itself from emotional vulnerability. And once you recognize them, you begin to understand that your peace, your truth, and your dignity do not depend on the approval or understanding of anyone else. Number 1. When someone has already decided who you are. One of the most important times when defending yourself is pointless is when a person has already made up their mind about you. Once someone decides who they believe you are, their brain works hard to protect that belief. This is known in psychology as confirmation bias, and it shapes human communication more than people realize. When someone carries a fixed impression of you, even if it's completely wrong, their mind filters everything you say through that belief. They aren't listening for truth. They're listening for signs that confirm what they already think. This is why defending yourself in these situations feels like arguing with a wall. If you calmly explain yourself, they interpret it as manipulation. If you express emotion, they interpret it as guilt or weakness. If you choose silence, they interpret it as proof that they're right. In their mind, every response you give reinforces the conclusion they already formed. What makes this situation even more complicated is that many of these fixed beliefs don't actually come from your behavior. They come from the other person's insecurities, past experiences, unresolved wounds, or internal narratives. When someone projects their fears onto you, they're not interacting with who you are. They're interacting with their own history. And that is something no amount of explanation can fix. Human philosophy teaches that your responsibility is to your character, not to someone's distorted perception of you. You cannot force someone to see you accurately. You cannot argue someone into fairness. You cannot debate your way into someone else's emotional maturity. And you cannot spend your life correcting misunderstandings that were born from someone else's wounds. The healthiest, strongest response in this situation is to let your actions speak. Not because you're being stubborn or proud, but because trying to fix someone's predetermined beliefs is a battle you will lose every time. People who truly know you don't need explanations. People who already decided to misunderstand you won't believe explanations. And once you understand that, you stop defending yourself to people who have already chosen their version of you in their minds. Number 2, when someone is arguing to win, not to understand. Another moment where defending yourself becomes pointless and destructive is when the person you are talking to is not trying to understand you. They are trying to win. In this dynamic, logic doesn't matter, intention doesn't matter, and clarity doesn't matter. The only thing that matters to them is being right. Their ego becomes louder than their ability to listen. Psychologists describe this as competitive communication. It's the type of interaction where the other person turns every conversation into a challenge or a debate. They interrupt you, they twist your words, they escalate minor disagreements into emotional battles, and when you try to defend yourself, it only fuels the conflict. Instead of hearing what you're trying to say, they treat your explanation like ammunition they can throw back at you. Trying to defend yourself in this situation is emotionally draining because you are not participating in a conversation. You're participating in a power struggle. And the moment you defend yourself, you give them more power. They gain emotional control. You lose your mental balance. They feel elevated. You feel depleted. The stakes also shift. You might be trying to solve a misunderstanding, repair a relationship, or express your side calmly. But they aren't looking for repair. They are looking for victory. And you cannot find resolution with someone who prioritizes winning over understanding. Human philosophy offers a simple but powerful insight here. Refusing to participate in a battle of egos is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. Conversations that are built on a desire for domination collapse naturally. You do not need to defend yourself in a space where fairness is absent. Silence in these moments is not avoidance. It is emotional self-protection. When someone is determined to win, your best choice is to step back and preserve your sanity instead of proving your point. You don't need to defeat them in conversation. Their own behavior defeats itself over time. Number 3, when your actions already show the truth. Another situation where defending yourself becomes unnecessary is when your actions already reveal who you are. Words carry power, but consistent behavior carries more. When you have shown honesty, loyalty, integrity, or good intentions through your actions, anyone who knows you can see your truth clearly. If a person ignores your consistency and demands verbal proof, their doubt is not coming from your behavior. Their doubt is coming from within themselves. Some people doubt your intentions not because you are unclear, but because their own internal world is filled with suspicion, insecurity, or emotional baggage. Others may doubt you because it serves their own narrative. In both cases, defending yourself becomes a cycle without resolution. You're trying to prove something that already exists in plain sight. There's a philosophical idea known as self-evident truth, which means that truth does not need to argue for itself because it appears naturally through consistent actions. If you live in a way that reflects your values, your explanation becomes redundant. When someone refuses to see what is already visible, no amount of verbal defense will change that. Explaining yourself over and over again starts to weaken your emotional boundaries and drain your self-confidence. Staying silent in this situation is not passive, it is intentional. It is saying without words that your life is your evidence. You are not responsible for convincing someone who refuses to observe what is already clear. Silence here is strength, because it shifts the burden of perception back to the person who is choosing not to understand. The truth lives in what you consistently do. You do not need to repeat what your actions have already shown. Number 4, when someone twists your words or intentions, a deeply painful and exhausting situation where you should avoid defending yourself is when someone continuously twists your words. This happens when a person listens to you through the filter of fear, resentment, insecurity, or past trauma. You speak calmly, and they hear hostility. You set a boundary, and they hear rejection. You explain your feelings, and they hear accusations. No matter how clearly you speak, your message arrives distorted. Psychologists call this emotional distortion. It occurs when a person projects their inner emotional world onto neutral situations. They interpret your words not based on what you meant, but based on how they feel, what they fear, or what they assume. When someone does this, defending yourself becomes an emotional trap. The more you clarify, the more they twist. The more you explain, the more suspicious they become. The more you soften your tone, the more they escalate. This pattern slowly trains you to doubt yourself, to question your own intentions, or to believe you are misunderstood because you expressed yourself poorly. But none of this is true. The distortion is happening in the other person's mind, and you are not responsible for correcting what their emotional wounds are creating. Human philosophy reminds us that clarity can only exist where listening exists. If someone twists your words, they are not listening to you. They are listening to their own fears. And when your words cannot reach another person's mind as you intended, silence becomes your protection. Stepping back is not giving up. It is refusing to pour your emotional energy into a container full of holes. You are not obligated to defend yourself against someone who insists on misunderstanding you. Their projections belong to them, not to you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to participate in a conversation that leads nowhere but deeper into distortion. Number 5. When defending yourself costs your peace. The final and most important situation is when the emotional cost of defending yourself becomes higher than the misunderstanding itself. Every explanation you give drains a part of you. Your nervous system reacts, your stress levels rise, your thoughts race. You replay the conversation in your head. You lose sleep. You strain your emotional balance. Psychologists refer to this as emotional economy, the idea that your mental and emotional energy must be protected in the same way you protect your physical energy. If defending yourself disrupts your peace more than the misunderstanding affects your life, then defending yourself becomes a form of self-harm. Not every misunderstanding needs to be fixed. Not every opinion needs to be corrected. Not every accusation needs a response, and not every person deserves access to your emotional world. Some people misunderstand you, and it does not affect your life in any meaningful way. Others misunderstand you, and the impact is small enough that defending yourself only makes the situation worse. In these moments, silence becomes a choice made out of strength, not surrender. Stepping back becomes an act of self-preservation. Letting go of the need to prove something becomes emotional maturity. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to correct every perception. You do not need to justify every intention. Your peace is worth more than someone else's approval. There will always be people who misunderstand you. Sometimes their misunderstanding comes from their biases, sometimes from their insecurities, sometimes from their need to be right, sometimes from their emotional wounds, and sometimes simply because they are not ready or willing to hear the truth. Your role is not to fight every one of these misunderstandings. Your role is to live in a way that reflects who you are and to protect your inner world from situations that drain you unnecessarily. Defending yourself feels like the responsible thing to do, but in many cases, it only pulls you deeper into emotional chaos. You are not required to correct minds that are already closed. You are not responsible for changing perceptions that were shaped by someone else's past. You are not obligated to justify what your actions already show. You do not need to explain yourself to people who twist your words or intentions. And you certainly do not need to sacrifice your peace to fix misunderstandings that will resolve themselves once distance and clarity return. Your character is bigger than a single moment. Your truth is stronger than someone's mistaken belief. And your peace is more valuable than any argument you could ever win. Choosing not to defend yourself in situations that do not deserve your energy is not avoidance. It is wisdom. It is emotional intelligence. It is the calm confidence of someone who knows who they are.